It's Our Story. Stephen Brown, Louisville, Kentucky.
So one of the things that's probably not so obvious, maybe a little from some of the things I said earlier, is that I haven't been using the wheelchair for the past 6 months, actually, almost now. So this has been a really interesting experience for me. I've gone from, in the past 20 years or so, using a manual wheelchair to using a motorized wheelchair to using no wheelchair. I've now taken about 5 trips, airline trips, without using a chair. And I tend to, of course, write about things because I'm a writer. But, you know, I can't write about not using a chair after a week of not doing it. So, but now it's almost 6 months. I put my chair in the storage closet about a month and a half ago. And I am writing about these experiences. So very slowly, because I'm doing this on my own time and I don't have that much of that anymore. But what I'm trying to do is kind of a combination of things, and of a couple of things. And that is, I'm trying to look at disability from a different perspective than I have, and I think many other people have. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm not sure I can say exactly because I'm still in the process of writing about it. But if you look at disability from the cultural standpoint that I was just talking about, you know, we have created, maybe created isn't the right word, we've identified and then promoted the pride we have in who we are as people with disabilities. And we've done some critique of society, not as much as the Europeans have done. The Europeans have really critiqued society from the perspective of how people with disability is treated. But I tend to look, to begin anyway, to look at things like how the prescription drug industry has really influenced how we look at disability today. And I think it's huge. I mean, I wrote an article a long time ago about, called Hooked on Symptoms, Drug Abuse from a Disability Perspective. And I talked about how prescription drug use was used to not only to assist people with disabilities in dealing with pain, but also to essentially, put down is not the right word, I'm not thinking of the right word, subdue people with disabilities from having the emotions that enable you to react to the oppression of society, because if you're zoned out on drugs, you don't need to do that. So I'm trying to look I'm trying to look at some of those things from a newer perspective. But I'm also trying to look at what does healing mean? And I'm a little bit reluctant to say much about that because I don't want to say healing means you do what I did and went from using a chair to not using a chair. That's not what I mean by it. But because I've gone through that experience, I have some perspectives about what healing and disability may be like that is different than actually anybody I've seen writing about it so far. So, you know, what does it mean to have a disability in this society and be whole in the broadest sense of that term, in the holistic sense of that term, to be integrated internally and externally and socially, which it's almost impossible for somebody with a disability to be because society has made it so that we really can't be completely integrated into society. And I'm sort of looking at those things. So because, you know, I'm in an academic environment, because I have a background as a historian, because I like to write, but at the same time, I'm also a popular culture kind of guy, and I like music and art and not so much comics anymore, but that kind of maybe a lowbrow culture that people talk about. You know, I sort of look at things in both ways. You know, how can we systemically change society, and how can we teach the people in colleges who are then going to go out and teach our children? You know, what can we teach them about disability, and how can we change their their attitudes about disability. And so I've had the really interesting experience for the last 2 or 3 years of teaching graduate seminars in disability and diversity, which have a lot of people from special education in the class. And I brought all my biases about special ed into my teaching, but some of those have changed because most of the people who are in the classes, most of whom don't have an obvious disability, but many of whom do have disabilities, really want to change the system, but aren't so sure of how to do that. Well, one of the ways I can do that is, hopefully, is by talking about all of these kinds of things, and they can take, the fact that they know somebody who has pride in being a person with a disability and talks about disability culture, and they can take that to their 4th grade classroom or wherever they're going to be. And at the same time, hopefully other academics who are having an influence on the writing that people do about disability and the teaching that people do about disability, that begins to change. I used to be more of a policy person and a street person, meaning person in the streets, trying to make change, and community advocate. But both because, as I've aged, I've gotten other interests and other energies, and also because there are a lot of other people who are doing that now. It's not so necessary for me to do that. So one of the things that's really changed over the years is there's a lot more of us who are making change. And I've always thought that you needed the street activists and the people who could deal with bureaucracies. I've never been one who particularly liked dealing with bureaucracies, but there are people who do. So the really important thing that I have always said about advocacy and pretty much anything, when people ask me what to do, is whatever works. And so one of the things that I think works is that you have a very multi-pronged approach to changing society. I don't think there's no question in my mind that society needs to change in regard to disability, as well as other things, but in regard to disability. But it's so huge that probably not any one person can have a huge impact unless you get into a position like president. And so far, we don't see a person with a disability who has that road to the presidency. So part of what all this kind of rambling is that I think it's really important to take the political strategies that you have as an individual and take that to whatever groups and coalitions that you can join. And also, we can all exhaust ourselves really quickly. So we have to prioritize where our energies are. One of the things I've done the past few years in Hawaii is worked pretty hard to try and keep physician-assisted suicide, which is a really nice way of putting it, from being legislated into law. But I don't have the energy right now to do much about that. But fortunately, in this process, other people have come around to do. So I think there's a lot of ways of looking at political strategy, but one of the most important ways is to build coalitions and use the talents of lots of people.
The It's Our Story project is a national effort to make disability history public and accessible. Visit us at www.itsourstory.org or on the It's Our Story project YouTube channel.